updates. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do with respect to LOD is, I've basically just going to sort of throw out this important announcement. Okay, and this possibly has some call to actions for people that are lab developers. Okay, so one of the things that's happening, okay, and this is going to start next month and is going to roll through most of the summer, is if you develop labs on Hyper-V, our Hyper-V hosts predominantly run Windows Server 2016 today. Okay, they will be being upgraded to Windows Server 2022. Okay, and we're expecting to complete this project during August. Okay. Now, as always, when we do, these types of updates and things, we are not expecting, any downtime that's going to impact customers or anything along those lines. We have a process where we drain hosts, so labs move off them. We then actually can take that host offline, we can upgrade it, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's going to be pretty straightforward. However, one of the things that's really important for us to highlight, we have discovered that with some old Linux distributions, they don't boot correctly, and there's some problems. Okay, so the first thing is we always want to highlight to people the document from Microsoft, which actually identifies the supported Linux versions for the Hyper-V platform. Okay, so always recommend that you review that document, so you can actually go to skill.info/hyper-v-linux, and that will show you what is actually supported. Now, one of the things we have found in our testing, okay, is Microsoft actually state that Ubuntu 14.04 is supported. However, we have discovered a bug in Hyper-V, which is actually preventing, in some instances, Ubuntu 14.04 kernels from booting properly. Okay, so ultimately, we have 3 activities going on with respect to that. We have first of all submitted this as a bug issue with Microsoft, and we're hoping Microsoft find a fix. They can reproduce it. They accept that it's a bug, and we are hopefully going to get a fix for that. But obviously, what we would recommend is actually, in a lot of scenarios, if you have the opportunity to upgrade, then ultimately, that is an 8-year-old Linux variant and things, so it's more than likely prudent to get rid of those older Linux ports on now. And if you are in a situation where you do actually have a problem, okay, and for some reason you're unable to upgrade, then please contact our support, and our support will help you. Okay, so just wanted to highlight that. So just in terms of a couple of things to think about, in terms of obviously if you're using Ubuntu 14.04, you would be aware of that. But other products that maybe use that or use that kernel, old versions of Kali. So if you're doing cybersecurity courses and you've maybe got some old versions of Kali, like the original 2.0 releases, they were built on the Ubuntu 14.04 kernel. So that might be something you want to review. The other product that I know of that was based on that kernel as well, which you might need to think about, is, again, it's cybersecurity related. There's actually a VM, or there's actually a software package you can get, which is called Metasploitable, and it effectively allows you to take a Linux machine and impose a whole load of vulnerabilities on that Linux machine for cybersecurity type training. Okay, now Metasploitable itself is an app that you can run on a whole range of Linux versions. However, okay, the people that produced Metasploitable did actually produce a VM, okay, with it all pre-built in. And the thing to bear in mind with that Metasploitable version 2 VM that they built is it was based on Ubuntu 14.04. So if you're using the VM that I think it was Rapid7 built from Metasploitable, it's likely it's on Ubuntu 14.04. Okay. If you've got the Metasploitable version 3, you should be okay. It was built on a newer kernel. Okay. So I just want to highlight that. Okay. So important sort of call to action now. Just to sort of basically do a bit of an audit, understand if you've got anything that might be using that, and actually what the what the actions might be, including contacting us and asking us for assistance. So the other thing, which is not something you will actually necessarily notice, but actually is quite a big thing for some of our customers, okay, is we're actually introducing a transparent proxy for the IDLX instructions, okay. So we've got our instructions panel on the right hand side, okay. A lot of people write and create their instructions directly within the utility itself, okay. However, one of the things we've always supported is the ability to pull instructions from external locations, okay. It's a feature we've always had. There's nothing sort of secret about it or anything along those lines. It's just something that we can do. Now, one of the things that we often have conversations with customers about with respect to this is, obviously, from instruction editing on our platform, we do not have any version control. So you can't roll back to an older version of instructions or anything along those lines. So some people like to actually store their instructions in an external repository where they can actually get version control and maybe other features along those lines. Okay. Now, our platform natively supports private GitHub repos, and it supports Azure DevOps ADO integration. Okay, and because they're authenticated services, they're all okay. We proxy those services; there are no problems at all. But what a lot of customers do is they actually use instruction include features actually within the lab instructions themselves. So to give you maybe a little example of this, let me just find something useful. Just bear with me for a second. Okay, should have had one of these prepared. I forgot about this. Brain like a sieve. Okay, so hopefully if I was to go and find something like this, let me just drag this across. Okay, so you can see here we're actually pulling the instructions in actually from a GitHub repository. Okay, so the raw.github user account. So if I was to sort of take this link, for example, and go and view the content of that link, oops, didn't do a very good job of copying there. See, if I just go and spin that into another tab, okay, you'll actually see that's the instruction content. Okay, so the problem you can have, and this is where the transparent instruction proxy comes from, is we have a lot of customers that may be accessing our lab content from restricted networks. Okay, so two core scenarios there. Scenario one, we could have customers that are developing content on our platform, and then they resell that content, and the customer they're selling to might have a restricted firewall, and therefore they're actually filtering outbound requests. So when they filter the outbound request, when people launch a lab, they can't see the instructions because that customer's firewall is actually blocking the instruction URL to actually download those instructions. The other place we come across this quite a lot is for a lot of our customers that actually create lab content and then sell that lab content internationally. So for example, one of the places Microsoft have this challenge as one of our customers is running their labs in China, because funny enough, GitHub's blocked in China. Okay, so they're unable to see the instructions in the instruction pane. Okay, so we have now introduced this transparent proxy. So what actually happens, it's actually controlled by the client. So there's no modifications you need to do in the labs or anything along those lines. It just happens automatically. So the JavaScript that's inside the lab client that we download, when it tries to retrieve the instructions from GitHub or wherever they are, if that request is blocked, it automatically redirects the request to the LOD platform, which the user's allowed to have access to. And the LOD platform will then transfer the instruction content down to the client. So it actually impacts the instructions rendering by about half a second is generally what we see. So there's a half-second delay in terms of retrieving the instructions. So for most lab scenarios, the user never actually notices it, because we've actually detected that before we display the actual full lab client. So that's quite an important change for customers that run into that issue. So it just happens automatically. It's enabled for every customer. There's nothing you need to do about that. So that's the core user type feature that's coming out for lab developers this month. And obviously I've mentioned the Hyper-V upgrade already. Okay. So as always, anyone got any questions on those two changes? You will hear from us a lot about the Hyper-V upgrade. You know, we're going to make a lot of noise about that, but this is the first public announcement, so you are on the edge of that change.